Hey folks, Blackcross here, and welcome to another discussion video. So, basically I was reading this article, and basically, I think it's Tespi Uemura, I think that's how you pronounce his name. If I mispronounce it, I do apologize tremendously. He stated in a review that the game would be better story-wise if you had played all of the previous games up to Kingdom Hearts 3's point. Which makes sense. I mean, no offense, it's been known for... ever since there have been a number of games that have been released in the previous times, the story is actually better if you've actually played the previous ones. Like, for example, the Mass Effect, Dot Hack series, for example, Uncharted, definitely, Ratchet & Clank, Jak and Daxter. I mean, if you like the games enough, it's better if you've played all the previous titles up to that current point. It makes sense. But what makes Kingdom Hearts so hard for newcomers to get into is because of the fact that the story has grown into kind of a collision course, as what some people proclaim. And I don't blame them for saying that, I really don't. The story can be confusing at times if you don't follow it closely. However, though, there are some titles that I would recommend people to play before they can even go on to say that, you know, I'm invested with the story itself and everything like that. So, I figure for this video, I kind of talk about the main games that I think people should play. And by main games, I mean story-crucial parts that people would play. And for the most part, yes, playing all of the games definitely makes it interesting, but there are some games that you probably won't need to play in order to get the story. So, first of all, I'm going to get this out of the way. Mandatory 1 and 2, you would have to play them both. And the reason why I say you would have to play them both is because those are the main titles that everyone likes. Like, seriously, if you hear like people's favorite top 10 list, it's going to be either Kingdom Hearts 1 or Kingdom Hearts 2, one or the other. And personally, I like Kingdom Hearts 1 better than I do Kingdom Hearts 2. Mostly because of the gameplay mechanics itself. But yes, Kingdom Hearts 2 is better in terms of gameplay. But when you consider the fact that the boss fights are extremely insane, it makes sense for why the gameplay is what it is. And I'm not arguing the fact that Kingdom Hearts 2 isn't as great as Kingdom Hearts 1. I'm just saying I like Kingdom Hearts 1 better than Kingdom Hearts 2. But in terms of story arc, I would definitely recommend playing 1 and 2, because in Chain of Memories, it actually goes to a point to where basically Sora forgets everything that happens in that game. So in terms of like detailed story, you wouldn't technically need to, but then you would wonder what happens to the other half of the organization members. And again, that's where Chain of Memory comes in. It talks about what happened to the first half of the organization members that you don't get to see in Kingdom Hearts 2. But then again, technically in terms of story arc, you wouldn't have to need to know the main story of Kingdom Hearts to play through Chain of Memories. 1 and 2 definitely are the mandatory ones. Chain of Memories is more of like if you want to know backstory of what happens in between the year between Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. 358/2, if you're interested in the organization members, and for that matter, Roxas, then definitely go for it. But in terms of like the main story, probably isn't required. Probably not. Recoded definitely is not required, mostly because it talks about one particular subject that eventually gets revealed in another game that I'm actually going to be talking about in just a sec. Burst by Sleep, I would actually recommend people, but because of the fact that you would end up playing as 3 separate characters, it probably wouldn't be the best one for your first choice. Like I said, I would go for Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 first before I would get invested with the series itself, because if you try to play Burst by Sleep, you're going to be completely confused as to all the characters that Kingdom Hearts has introduced. At least if you play through Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, you kind of get an idea as to who is who, because it explains the individual organization members. Well, not all of them, but throughout the most of Organization, like the first half, from like 1 all the way up to I think it's like 7, maybe even 8. Yeah, because I think Sias is 8. Yeah, it is up to 8. I had to think for a second. It's like, which Organization member does it stop introducing? It's like, yeah, it has to be 8. So anyway, and then of course it talks about like the Kairi, Riku, Sora, like how they got connected to all of this and everything like that. It's pretty interesting, but again, I would recommend playing 1 and 2 first before you get invested with Burst by Sleep, just to make certain. Like, if you don't know if you're going to be interested in the game or not, play the first 2. And then, if you get interested in it, then I would play Burst by Sleep, and then the story kind of unveils itself. But, in terms of, like, if you want to know the full story, like, right down to the grit of all the story, probably 2.8 would be your best chance. Now, with this HD re-releases that we've been getting, 1.5 and 2.5, they've actually been a great thing for newcomers because of the fact that we have gotten, like, how many games now? 7? Yeah, 7 or 8, I think, at this rate. Because of Kingdom Hearts Key. But that's a mobile app, so, again, unless you have a smartphone, but I don't, so it doesn't really matter. But the point is that 1.5 and 2.5 has actually been a big help for newcomers, because then they're introduced to the story of Kingdom Hearts, and they're kind of caught up to pace. That being said, 2.8 is probably the biggest one that I would recommend players to try to pick up if they're wanting to get into the Kingdom Hearts story and get the story right away. Why do I say that? Well, in Dream Drop Distance, which was a 3DS title, you play as both Sora and Riku, and basically it takes place immediately after Kingdom Hearts 2 leaves off. And yes, you would miss a whole bunch of the story, but the best part about it is that throughout the game, they do actually give you like a chronological page of the details that happened in between games. Like, you'll first get Kingdom Hearts 1 and then Kingdom Hearts 2. Then it goes into like Chain of Memories, Burst by Sleep, 358/2 Days, and then of course Recoded. So I mean, it helps you out in terms of story. Like, I would actually urge players, if they want to know the story and everything like that, if they want to get down to the dirt of getting a quick analysis of the story, Dream Drop Distance is the best one, because it does tell a quick summary and key points, mind you, because the Kingdom Hearts series, let's put it this way, Kingdom Hearts 1 is the best one because, you know, you get a full detail and everything like that. Kingdom Hearts 2, where it kind of unveils that the Disney worlds aren't really so important, so much as that kind of makes it a lengthy game. The main story is from where at the very beginning, and then a middle section, and then towards the end, towards the final boss. Everything else, though, is kind of like tiny pieces of the main story itself. The Disney world, again, just more or less lengthen the game itself. And ever since then, that's just how it's been, you know? There's really no big story in between the individual worlds, it's just small bits. With the exception of like 3 or 4 worlds, which are Kingdom Hearts themed worlds. Meaning that there are no other worlds that are based on Disney World. They're just their own world that were created for the Kingdom Hearts story plot itself. And like I said, I would urge people to play Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 to kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to say. But Dream Drop Distance tells the whole story as you're playing through the game. Like, as you're playing through the game, you may get confused about certain things, but then it slowly reveals the story as a whole thing, and then you're already caught up to speed. Until you get to the end, in which case your brain is probably going to have a brain fart like mine. But, again, I'll let you play Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance in order to get an idea of what I mean. But another good thing is the fact that in 2.8 we get introduced to Kingdom Hearts Key back cover, which is a storyline that's in the Kingdom Hearts Key of the mobile phone apps. So in other words, we already going to be having the story detail of the Keyblade Wars as to like what happened back then. And I guess you don't necessarily have to know that, But if you get interested into the Kingdom Hearts games a little bit and you want to know, like, okay, what is this Keyblade War they're talking about? Kingdom Hearts Key back cover is definitely a good idea to pick up on. Because from what I've heard, there are actually some crucial details that goes on, deeper detail, as to what happens in Kingdom Hearts Key. I don't know the full details myself, but after hearing so much about it, I have a theory, but again, I'm not going to talk about it until I watch the HD movie to kind of get an idea if my theory is correct. And if it's not, then my theory is proven false. But if not, I'll actually do a discussion video about it. But then of course we also got the Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep 0.2 Fragmentary Passage, which is the Aqua sequence that's happened at the end of the bonus episode of Birth by Sleep Final Mix, where Aqua's in the realm of darkness and she finds out about this castle, which happens to be Cinderella's castle. So again, 2.8 would be the best time for newcomers to pick up because Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance will tell the whole story from the beginning all the way up to where it's at right now, and then you're playing the main game itself, which the story does actually get a little bit interesting. Then of course you got Kingdom Hearts Key back cover and then Fragmentary Passage afterwards. So again, that's just perfect saying. But yeah, it's just, that's probably one of the biggest things that's kind of got people in a distance from Kingdom Hearts, is that the story's a little bit complicated. There are some other reasons why people don't play it, like some say that the Disney worlds are more or less lackluster, which I can understand why, but really the gameplay is the best part about the game, and from what I've heard about Kingdom Hearts 3, the game is going to be so freaking huge that I'm like, I really want to know how big it is. Like, seriously, it's supposed to be bigger in terms of, like, world expansion than what was in Kingdom Hearts 2. And Kingdom Hearts 2 had a lot of worlds, but then again, you visited them twice. But what makes it more interesting is the fact that these worlds are going to be one whole map, not just separate maps, one whole map. So in other words, you're basically freely roaming an entire world without having to go into like separate sections of a map itself. Which I'm very excited for. I want to see how they do that, because if that's the case, I'm hoping that the next set of Kingdom Hearts games that they release afterwards are like this, because it looks amazing. But yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and talk about what I feel like is crucial in terms of like Kingdom Hearts story for those who wants to get like a head start of the story itself. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be like, maybe I could explain the story for them. But honestly, I would be afraid that I would mess up terribly. Like, I don't think I would execute the storyline of Kingdom Hearts perfectly. Like, there are actually some YouTube videos out there that do a better job at explaining the story than what I could. Personally, I could probably tell you, like, of certain things in here and there, but then I would miss, like, certain points that are important to the story, and really there's no real way to explain it. In fact, any casual fan of Kingdom Hearts would tell you that just play the games. There's no real way for me to explain the story without you being confused. And they're right. Because if you try to explain the story to them, they're going to miss like small key bits that's going to be crucial to the story later on. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's actually a good thing when you consider the fact that we've got games like, I want to say like Dark Souls or even Bloodborne, where the story is completely hidden and it's left to the person to interpret what the story is. And Kingdom Hearts is sort of that same way, except through all the games are connected. Whereas Dark Souls, none of them are really like actual connection. Some of them are like sort of like the Legend of Zelda series, where they're like 1,000 years apart or so. But Kingdom Hearts is more closer together, and they're more into one story arc. But that's just me. But anyway, I figured I'd go ahead and put a little discussion video out for you guys about the Kingdom Hearts and everything like that, and what I feel like is the most important for you to play if you want to get caught up with the story. Again, I would recommend playing 1 and 2 just to see if you would be interested in the Kingdom Hearts series, and then absolutely Dream Drop Distance, it tells the whole story in that game. But again, Like I said, if you want to try it out, play 1 and 2, and then that way you'll know if you're going to be invested with the games themselves. Because the individual games, they're good, but they're not as great as Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance at all. Trust me on this. But anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. This is Black Cross signing off. Take care, guys.